Hello everyone, I'm Lavanya from YourPedia, and today we are going to learn everything you need to know about how to attempt a pie chart question in your academic task 1 for IELTS. Now, you're already aware in your IELTS exam there are 4 different modules: reading, listening, writing, and speaking. We are going to focus on writing and specifically on the task 1. For those who are not aware, in your writing task, you get 2 tasks, task 1 and task 2. Task 1 is all about presenting information that is given in pictorial form into words, can be like a bar graph, or it can be a line graph, a pie chart, or maybe even a map. And task 2 is about writing an essay. Okay, so back to the topic, we are going to focus on writing a task 1 for IELTS, which is going to be about pie charts. Now, a general overview about writing task 1 is, as I said before, in this, you have to write information that is given in a pictorial form, in an image, that is a pie chart, bar graph, or line graph, anything, into words. Now, in this, you have to make sure that you have writing this information in 50 words, 150 words, that is in minimum. Okay, so this is the minimum limit that is given to you. You can obviously exceed it by however much you want to, though try to make sure that you're not exceeding more than, like, let's say 300 words, because you have to do this in less than 20 minutes. All right, so there is a time limit given here. You have to do it in less than 20 minutes. So 150 words is the minimum limit, and for time, the maximum limit is 20 minutes. After that, you have to make sure that you're writing it in a formal form of style. That means you cannot use any abbreviations like can't, don't, doesn't. Okay, all of these are abbreviations. Always make sure you're writing full words, that is, do not or cannot. Okay, also another thing, try not to use any personal pronouns. Okay, these are not allowed. What are personal pronouns? As in he, she, it, or even more importantly, they might be used if they're talking about something like very individual, which is very rare but still possible. Never ever use they, okay, or you specifically, or I. These 3 words should never be used in any part of your IELTS test. Okay, so you have to avoid personal pronouns at all costs. After that, let's move on to the question at hand, which is, how do you attempt a pie chart? This is a sample question for those who want to attempt a pie chart question. Now, anyone who is already aware about how you can solve a question like this should pause the video right now and try to do it by themselves. For those who are not aware about how to go on about these questions, I will actually explain it all. So, first of all, let us understand what the question is. As you can see, there are 2 different pie charts that are given to us here. And what you have to do is that in this chart, in these pie charts, what is given is that the percentage of time working adults, that is, people who are working, spend on different activities in a particular country. The country has not been specified, in 2 different years, 1958 and 2008. And as I said before, what you have to do is you have to summarize this information that is given in a pictorial form in words. Okay, now how do you do that? The first thing you need to know is the structure. For the structure, my handwriting is horrible, I apologize for that. So just listen to what I'm saying. For every task 1 in writing for IELTS, you will always write at least 4 paragraphs. Okay, the first paragraph is going to be an introduction. Then there are going to be 2 body paragraphs, body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, and you're going to write an overall statement, which is basically your conclusion. Okay, so these 4 paragraphs are absolutely important, and now you need to know is how you divide the information for them in your report writing, or you can say in your task 1. Okay, so I'll just give myself some more space to write. Here we can see that there is a big gap. Okay, first of all, you need to plan your information ahead of this, okay, because you're only given 20 minutes and you do not want to write something, then backspace or erase it and then rewrite it. So very first thing is that you have to plan the information, and to plan it, you need to understand what is happening in the graphs. Okay, the easiest way to understand anything is focus on things that stand out the most. So what are they spending most of the time on? The working individuals. The first is working or sleeping. Even in the after 50 years, you can see the gap 1958 to 2008. So they are still spending majority of the time working and sleeping. the least amount of time was spent on these three activities, that is interest, going out with friends, and traveling. Same here. These three activities took a lot less time, though this has been changed. You can see a difference here in these figures too. So now you understand what is happening in graph a little bit. You know the highest amount of time was spent on this activity and the least amount of time was spent on the other activities. So we're going to actually focus our introduction on the one they spent the most or the least time on. Okay. So your first paragraph is the intro. What are you going to include in intro? The very first thing is that what kind of graph is given. Okay, that is very important. You have to say that the given two pie charts depict that. The given, if they are line graphs, the given line graph depicts that. Or if it's a bar graph, then you'll say the given bar graph depicts that. So here you're going to start your report with saying the given two pie charts depicts the daily schedule of the working adults or employed adults in a particular country on specific activities in year this and that. Okay, if you're very confused, I will repeat it again. What I have done is that I have shown what kind of graph is given and what kind of information is given. And where did I get this line from? I just reverted the very first line of my question. The question says percentage of time working adults spent on different activities in a particular country in year this and this. So instead of saying working adults, I just said employed adults. All right, you can even say employed individuals. And then you can just say how much time they spent on different activities, different hobbies or anything like that, or their daily schedule. That could be a good word. You can just say that the two pie charts depict the daily schedule of employed adults in a country in two specific years, this and this. So this is your introduction because these are the major things you need to include in it. What kind of graph it is and what kind of information it is depicted. If you feel like your information is a little lacking and you think that, okay, one sentence is not enough for introduction, though it is, you can add another sentence which will point out something very, obvious about the text, about the graph that is given. So, this can be called it at a cursory glance. I call it this sentence because then you will not make any grammatical errors while writing this. In this, you will just point out something very obvious. So, at a cursory glance, it is obvious that many adults spend most of their time either working or on sleeping in both the years or even after 50 years of gap. That is it. You will never ever give any hardcore figures or any hardcore, specific things that is 33% or 32% that is given here. You will never, include that in your introduction. Your introduction should be very simple, easy to read, and just introduce the topic. So to introduce the topic, you just need to say what kind of graph it is and what kind of information it is depicting. That is it. Okay, so after writing this, you will move on to your body paragraphs. Now, we have to include our information in two body paragraphs. So you have to start, making sure that you can actually divide your information in two different parts. There are a number of ways you can actually describe your information in this. You can go about, comparing different activities together. So you can say that working in 1958 took 33% of an individual's time, while after 50 years, it won't actually increase to 42%. That is one way you can go about it. Compare every activity separately together. Or you can do this is that you can invest one whole paragraph on just describing what happened in 1958 and then another paragraph on describing what happened in 2008. But if you're going with this approach, you have to make sure that when you're describing information from 2008, you're making as many comparisons and pointing out as many similarities between these 2 years as possible. This is very important because you can see, look at the question again. Point out the main features and make comparisons where relevant. They want you to point out all the comparisons and similarities possible between the two given pie charts. So make sure that you actually include this kind of information in your answer. Okay, I'm going with the different year approach because it's just easier to summarize information in a different way in that case. So my BP1 is going to be dedicated to representing what happened in 1958. To start a PV paragraph in your academic task one, all you have to do is, just simply jump into describing the information. You do not need to write anything extra. You do not need to make sentences on your own in this. You just have to say what is happening in the question. So you can start it very simply in saying that in 1958, almost one third of the day was spent on working, because you can see 33% is very clearly like one third of 100%. So instead of just saying 33%, I can say one third of the day. Okay, and then majority of the time was spent on sleeping, and there I can just brackets write 32%. So you have to actually present your information in a very smart way. You don't actually have to say everything directly that, okay, 33% of the time was spent on working, 32% of the time was spent on sleeping, 8% of the time was spent on relaxing at home. Don't do that. You're repeating the same structure, same sentence structure over and over again. That should be avoided. Okay, so present your information in a smart way. You can start with, okay, one third of the day was spent working, and then just after that, majority of the time left over was spent on sleeping, and in brackets you can say 32%. After that, the least time was spent on traveling to work, which was 2% in 1958. Though they spent a relatively big amount of time going out with their friends and family and relaxing at home, 19% and 8% respectively. The rest of the time left, which is 6%, was spent on other activities or interests that they had, which could include playing sports or other hobbies. Okay, so in this way, I have very, accurately summarized my information for 1958. Very simple, isn't it? I have used different sentence structures, different way of, giving the information, and I have not repeated any sentence, and that is what you want. Now, after I've presented all the information for 1958, I'm going to move on to the next year, which is 2008. In 2008, I'm going to present the information by making comparisons wherever possible with the previous year. Okay, so here I'll just say that in 2008, you can obviously start it very simply. Okay, so in 2008, the time spent on working increased by 7%. Okay, or actually it's 9%. I'm sorry, not good with maths. So the percentage of time that increased was 9%. So I'll just say that. I won't say that they spent 42% of the time. I'll say that increased by 9%. Okay, and same for sleeping, they decreased it by 7%, right? So that is how you will actually present your information in your BP2. You will make comparisons by not giving the exact figures, but they'll have to, kind of recall what you have said in the previous passage, and then they'll understand what is happening in this. So this actually increases your cohesion points, and it makes your essay sound more smooth, and it doesn't seem like you have just dumped all the information possible in the report. You have actually, understood it and summarized it in an accurate way. So that is how you'll start making comparisons. So you can say that in 2008, the time spent on working increased by 9%, whereas the time spent on sleeping decreased by 7%. Then in the same way, you can just start saying that, okay, the time spent relaxing at home increased by 5%, or it increased from 8 to 13%, while the time spent going out with friends and family decreased tremendously from 19% to 6%, which is not even half of its original figures, or even one third of its original figures. Okay. After that, you'll just describe what happened with other interest and travel to work. You're done. So you have summarized all your information for this year too. Now we are left with our last paragraph, which is an overall statement, or you can even call it a conclusion. Though try never to write the words to conclude or in summary or even finally for your writing task one in academic. Always avoid that. Only use the word overall as the conjunction that starts the sentence. Okay, your overall statement is literally just a sentence or two, which will say something very obvious and something that has also not been pointed out in the paragraphs above. So here you can say that overall, working took more time of the day and relaxing at home also became more popular after 50 years. Okay, so this way I have just pointed out something very obvious and something that I've not said before. Okay, so in this way, you will actually summarize all your information for a pie chart. This is a structure, and these are the tips that you absolutely have to follow if you want to get a good score in your IELTS writing task one. So this is a sample answer you can follow, and take a screenshot if you want to read it again, and just make sure whatever attempt that you have given is on the same level as this one. After that, I have certain tips that I wanted to go over once again so that everything is super clear. Okay, so the very first thing is, which is the most important, is that you need to realize that you do not need to write down every single figure exactly how it is given in the chart. Okay, remember when we were discussing how in 1958 and 2008 the working time increased and the sleeping time decreased? We didn't say that the working time right now was 42%. We said that it increased by 9%, which is very important. Okay, because this gives us brings us to our next step, which is try to represent the figures in a different way every time. If you're trying to do that, you will notice that you actually cannot possibly give the figures exactly every time you do try to do this, because then you'll be repeating the sentence over and over again. To do so, you will make comparisons and point on similarities, and you can just point your information out in different ways in this. All right. So this is another way you can reframe it as saying, make sure that sentence structure is not being repeated. Then a very important point and a golden trick for your writing task one is that always plan ahead. This is the most important thing ever. You always need to make sure that you know what you're going to write in your introduction overall before you even start writing your body paragraph. This is necessary because you do not want to repeat your information over and over again in your report. What you have to do is that make sure you have pointed out one thing, kept aside one single point that you will not mention in your body paragraphs, and keep it safe for introduction and overall. This way, when you do not repeat information, the invigilator will definitely give you a better score. But if you keep on repeating the same information over and over again, even when you're writing only 150 or so words, then it is very obvious that you have repeated information and they will give you a bad score. So make sure you are cohesive and you are very precise till the very end and you do not mess up your overall statement. After that, this is a recommendation and not exactly like a rule. I would suggest that you try to do your task one in 15 minutes or so. I know you're given 20 minutes to do this, and there are even students who take 30 minutes. But normally, you should give more time to your essay than your report writing because your essay will have more weightage in your score. So, in your writing task one, you're anyway not, including something from your own self. You're just representing the information in words that has been given in your pictorial form. So to do that, you should not be taking more than 15 minutes. So try to practice a lot and make sure that you do this in less than 15 minutes, or at least you do it in 15 minutes. That's it. Okay. It will require a lot of practice, but you can definitely do it. Okay, so this was it for today. If you want to practice another question, because now you know how to do pie charts, and here is another question that you can attempt to, and you can practice on your own and make sure that you follow all the tips and tricks that I've discussed here. Okay, and practice well. So this was it for today. Thank you for listening in. I'll see you next week with another video such as this.